A man cannot outrun his past on horseback, for it follows him like his own shadow. True courage is not the absence of fear, but facing what you have done wrong. Joshua Wilkes stood at the window of his weathered cabin, calloused hands wrapped around a tin cup of bitter coffee. The Wyoming Territory stretched endlessly before him, painted in shades of gold and amber by the setting sun. White River Valley had been his sanctuary for 4 years now, a place where a man could forget who he used to be and maybe find peace in the silence of the prairie winds. He pulled out the worn letter from his shirt pocket, reading Elizabeth, his delicate handwriting for the 100th time. His mail-order bride would arrive on tomorrow, a stage from St. Louis, bringing with her the promise of a new beginning. At 38, Joshua had nearly given up on the possibility of happiness, but Elizabeth's letters had rekindled something he thought was dead inside him. The thunder came without warning. At first, Joshua mistook it for a distant storm, but the sound was too rhythmic, too purposeful. He grabbed his spyglass and stepped onto the porch, scanning the horizon with practiced eyes. What he saw made his blood turn to ice water in his veins. Dozens of mounted Cheyenne warriors swept across the valley floor like a dark tide, their war cries carrying on the evening air. They moved with deadly precision, cutting off every trail and passage that led out of the valley. Joshua counted at least 60 riders, maybe more, their painted faces and eagle feathers marking them as a war party fresh from raiding the ranches to the east. His peaceful refuge had become a death trap, and somewhere on the trail, Elizabeth's stagecoach was rolling straight into the heart of danger. The tranquility he had craved for so long might now become his final resting place. Joshua watched through his spyglass as a single rider separated from the Cheyenne war party, approaching his cabin under a white flag. The young warrior sat tall on his painted pony, his movements deliberate and fearless. Joshua grabbed his Winchester rifle but kept it lowered as the Indian drew closer. The warrior dismounted 20 yards from the porch, his dark eyes fixed on Joshua with unsettling intensity. When he spoke, his English was clear and precise, carrying an education that surprised the former lawman. "Joshua Wilkes," the warrior said, his voice cutting through the evening air like a blade. "You wait for woman who will never come." Joshua, his grip tightened on his rifle. "What do you know about Elizabeth?" The warrior reached into his leather pouch and withdrew a folded document, holding it up for Joshua to see. "Elizabeth Kendrick died 2 weeks ago in St. Louis. Cholera took her, along with dozen others in the same boarding house." The words hit Joshua like a physical blow. He stumbled forward, snatching the paper from the warrior's hand. The official death certificate bore the seal of St. Louis County, confirming his worst fears. Elizabeth Kendrick, age 26, deceased from cholera complications. Then who? Joshua's voice trailed off as the implications sank in. The warrior's expression remained impassive. Someone important enough to bring 100 warriors to this valley. Someone who has waited 4 years for this moment. He gestured toward the distant dust cloud marking the approaching stagecoach. "Your past rides in that coach, Marshal Wilkes. Time to face what you've been running from." The carefully constructed dreams of a peaceful future crumbled around Joshua as his buried past began to surface. The Cheyenne warriors studied Joshua with eyes that seemed to pierce through 4 years of carefully constructed lies. "Marshal Wilkes of Black Rock," he said, each word deliberate and weighted. "The lawman who made fatal mistake that changed everything." Joshua felt the familiar crushing weight settle on his chest, the same suffocating guilt that had driven him to this remote valley. The memories came flooding back like a dam bursting, washing away the fragile peace he had built. 4 years ago, he had been leading a posse in pursuit of the Dawson Gang, notorious bank robbers who had terrorized 3 counties. The chase had led them to a trading post where innocent families had stopped for supplies. In the chaos of the shootout, Joshua's men had opened fire without clear targets, desperate to end the pursuit that had lasted weeks. The Kendrick family had been caught in the crossfire. Joshua could still hear the screams, still see the blood spreading across the dusty ground. Thomas Kendrick, the father, had died instantly. His wife Sarah had lived long enough to beg Joshua to protect her children before the light faded from her eyes. Young Elizabeth, barely 16, had died in his arms while her 12-year-old sister Martha watched in horror from behind an overturned wagon. "I remember you," the warrior continued. "You threw down your badge that day and ran like coward. Left Dawson Gang free to kill again while you hid in mountains, seeking redemption in solitude." Joshua, his hands trembled as he dropped the death certificate. The stagecoach was getting closer, carrying someone who had spent 4 years planning this moment of reckoning. His past had finally caught up with him. The stagecoach rolled to a stop in a cloud of dust, its wheels creaking under the weight of its journey. Joshua watched with growing dread as the door swung open and a young woman stepped down, her movements graceful despite the harsh travel. She was perhaps 20 years old, with auburn hair pinned beneath a traveling hat and green eyes that burned with unmistakable fury. "Hello, Joshua," she said, her voice carrying the refined accent of Eastern education mixed with something harder, more dangerous. "I am Martha Kendrick." The name hit Joshua like a sledgehammer to the chest. The 12-year-old girl who had watched her family die had grown into a woman consumed by the need for justice. Martha smoothed her dark traveling dress and fixed him with a stare that could have frozen hell itself. "Surprised to see me alive? You never bothered to check what happened to the surviving Kendrick child, did you? Too busy running away to care about the mess you left behind." She reached into her reticule and withdrew a bundle of letters tied with ribbon. "Every word Elizabeth wrote to you came from my pen. I studied her handwriting for months, learned how a lonely woman might express herself to a stranger. I became the perfect bride for a coward seeking redemption through love." Joshua staggered backward, the full scope of her deception overwhelming him. "Why?" "Because after you threw down your badge and disappeared like a coward, the Dawson gang continued killing. You stopped pursuing them. Joshua, your shame and guilt made you abandon the hunt, leaving dangerous men free to destroy other families." Her voice rose with each word, years of contained rage finally finding release. The Cheyenne warrior nodded grimly. 100 warriors surround this valley not just for revenge, but to ensure you cannot run again. Martha opened a leather satchel and spread its contents on the porch table with methodical precision. Wanted posters, newspaper clippings, and official reports created a damning mosaic of violence and death. Each document bore the same names, the Dawson gang. 12 people, Joshua, Martha said, her finger tracing each victim's name. 12 innocent souls who died because you were too much of a coward to finish what you started. The Morrison family in Colorado Springs. The bank clerk in Cheyenne. The preacher and his wife in Laramie. Joshua stared at the evidence of his failure, each face a testament to his abandonment of duty. The weight of their deaths pressed down on him like a physical force, making it hard to breathe. "I have spent 4 years tracking every movement of the Dawson gang," Martha continued, her voice steady despite the emotion burning in her eyes. 4 years documenting their crimes while you hid in this valley, playing at being a simple farmer. The Cheyenne warrior stepped closer, his weathered face etched with shared pain. "She speaks truth. Dawson gang killed members of my tribe also. They attacked our winter camp 2 seasons ago, murdered women and children for sport." Martha nodded toward the warrior. "Gray Eagle lost his daughter and grandson to their cruelty. His warriors joined my cause because they understand that some debts can only be paid in blood." She fixed Joshua with a stare that could have melted steel. "I want more than your death, Marshal Wilkes. I want you to become the man you should have been 4 years ago. I want you to finish hunting the monsters you allowed to escape." Gray Eagle, his hand rested on his tomahawk. "You help find Dawson gang and find redemption, or you die in this valley as coward." Martha pulled out a railroad timetable, her finger pointing to a circled entry. "The Dawson gang has chosen their next target. Every Thursday, a special train carries 35 orphan children from eastern cities to adoptive families in the Western Territories." Joshua felt his blood turn cold as he studied the schedule. The weekly orphan train represented hope and new beginnings for dozens of children who had already lost everything. "They plan to rob the train at Cross Creek Station," Martha continued, her voice tight with urgency. "It is a remote stop with no law enforcement for 40 miles in any direction. The gang cares nothing for the children who might be caught in the crossfire." Gray Eagle spoke with quiet intensity. "My people know pain of losing children. White government takes our young ones to their schools, tears families apart. We will not let more children suffer if we can prevent it." Martha, his jaw tightened with frustration. "I tried to warn the territorial authorities, but they dismissed information coming from Indian sources. They refused to act on testimony from Cheyenne warriors, calling it unreliable." Joshua studied the map, his military training automatically calculating distances and logistics. Cross Creek Station sat in a natural bottleneck between 2 mesas, perfect for an ambush but terrible for escape routes. "The train arrives tomorrow at noon," Martha said, watching Joshua, his face for any sign of the lawman he used to be. 35 children, Joshua. Boys and girls between the ages of 6 and 16, all hoping for families and futures. Gray Eagle, this expression hardened. Dawson Gang shows no mercy to innocent. They kill for pleasure as much as profit. Martha folded the timetable with deliberate care. This is your chance to stop running from your failures and start preventing new ones. Those children deserve a protector. Joshua walked slowly to his cabin, each step feeling like a man approaching his own execution. Inside, he knelt beside an old cedar chest that had remained unopened for 4 years. His hands trembled as he lifted the heavy lid, revealing the carefully folded remnants of his former life. The Marshal's badge lay wrapped in black cloth, its silver surface tarnished but still bearing the proud inscription, United States Marshal, Wyoming Territory. He had never been able to throw it away, despite the shame it represented. Even in his deepest self-loathing, some part of him had kept this symbol of the man he once was. Martha and Gray Eagle watched from the doorway as Joshua pinned the badge to his leather vest. The weight of it felt both familiar and foreign, like putting on the skin of the man he had tried to forget. "This does not make us even," Martha said quietly, her voice carrying 4 years of accumulated pain. "Nothing will bring back my family or undo the suffering your cowardice caused." Joshua nodded, understanding the truth in her words. "I know. I am not seeking your forgiveness, Martha. I am seeking to prevent another family from experiencing what yours did." He checked his Colt revolver and rifle, muscle memory guiding his hands through preparations he had not made in years. The familiar ritual of loading ammunition and cleaning weapons brought back the focused intensity that had once made him a respected lawman. Gray Eagle stepped forward, offering his hand in an unexpected gesture of alliance. "My warriors will ride with you, Marshal." The Dawson Gang brought sorrow to both our peoples. Martha's expression softened slightly as she watched Joshua transform from a broken hermit back into something resembling the lawman he had once been. "Those children deserve a chance at life. We ride for them." Within 90 minutes, the unlikely alliance prepared to leave White River Valley behind. Joshua loaded his saddlebags with ammunition, dried meat, and the basic supplies needed for what might be his final mission. His horse, a sturdy bay gelding named Ranger, seemed to sense the gravity of their departure, stamping restlessly as Joshua checked the cinch straps. Martha emerged from the cabin wearing practical riding clothes she had brought in her traveling trunk. Her elegant dress had been replaced by dark trousers, a leather jacket, and sturdy boots. She handled her Winchester carbine with practiced efficiency, checking the action and loading the magazine with movements that spoke of careful training. "My father taught me to shoot before he taught me to read," she said, noticing Joshua's surprised expression. "He believed a frontier woman should be able to protect herself." Gray Eagle's warriors materialized from their concealed positions like ghosts becoming flesh. 23 mounted Cheyenne formed a disciplined fighting force, their painted ponies dancing with barely contained energy. Each warrior carried a rifle alongside traditional weapons, their faces painted for war but their eyes focused on justice. The group represented everything the frontier was supposed to reject: a disgraced marshal seeking redemption, a young woman driven by righteous vengeance, and a band of Indians united with whites in common cause. Yet their shared purpose transcended the racial hatred and territorial disputes that usually divided the Wyoming plains. As they rode out of the valley, Joshua felt something he had not experienced in 4 years: hope. Not the desperate hope of a man seeking escape from his past, but the determined hope of someone finally ready to face his demons. The setting sun painted their shadows long across the prairie as the unlikely brotherhood rode toward Cross Creek Station and their appointment with destiny. For the first time since Black Rock, Marshal Joshua Wilkes was riding toward danger instead of away from it. The journey to Cross Creek Station led the unusual company through treacherous territory where settlements were few and suspicion ran deep. They avoided the main trails, knowing that the sight of armed Cheyenne warriors riding alongside whites would likely provoke panic or violence from nervous settlers still haunted by memories of recent Indian raids. As they made camp on the second night, Martha sat beside the flickering fire and spoke words that Joshua had never expected to hear. "My father once told me that true heroes are not those who never make mistakes, but those who find the courage to correct them, no matter the cost." Joshua looked up from cleaning his rifle, surprised by the gentleness in her voice. This was the closest thing to forgiveness he would ever receive from Martha Kendrick, and he accepted it as sufficient. "Your plan was perfect from the beginning," Joshua said quietly. "You did not want my death. You wanted to force me to become the man I should have been 4 years ago." Martha nodded, her green eyes reflecting the firelight. Killing you would have been empty revenge. Making you face your failures and use them to protect others. That was justice. Gray Eagle shared dried buffalo meat with the group, his weathered face thoughtful. In my tribe, we believe that a man's true strength comes not from avoiding falls, but from how he rises after falling. You fell far, Marshal Wilkes, but you rise with purpose. The Cheyenne warriors maintained their vigilant watch around the camp. These men who had chosen to fight alongside their traditional enemies for the sake of children they had never met. Their presence transformed Joshua's personal quest for redemption into something larger, more meaningful. As Joshua lay beneath the star-filled Wyoming sky, he understood that Martha's elaborate deception had accomplished something remarkable. She had taken his destructive guilt and transformed it into a force for protecting the innocent. Tomorrow would bring the ultimate test of whether he could truly become the Marshal he had always been meant to be. 3 days after leaving White River Valley, the unlikely alliance crested the final ridge overlooking Cross Creek Station. The remote outpost sat like a weathered sentinel in the valley below, its single wooden platform and water tower marking the intersection of civilization and wilderness. In the distance, a plume of black smoke announced the approaching orphan train, carrying 35 children toward what should have been new lives but might become their final destination. Joshua studied the terrain through his spyglass, his trained eye identifying the perfect ambush positions the Dawson gang would choose. The station offered limited cover and no escape routes, making it a death trap for anyone caught in the crossfire. They are already here, Gray Eagle reported, pointing to fresh horse tracks and disturbed brush around the mesa formations. 8 men, maybe 9, positioned to attack when train stops for water. Martha checked her carbine one final time, her jaw set with determination. Those children have already lost their families. They will not lose their lives if we can prevent it. Joshua felt the weight of his badge against his chest, no longer a symbol of shame but a reminder of the oath he had taken to protect the innocent. The man who had fled from his responsibilities 4 years ago was gone, replaced by someone ready to face the consequences of his choices. As the train whistle echoed across the valley, announcing the arrival of the orphan train, Joshua Wilkes prepared for the most important battle of his life. The alliance of a guilt-ridden marshal, a justice-seeking woman, and honor-bound warriors represented something more powerful than revenge. The possibility of redemption through courage and the protection of those who could not protect themselves. The train rounded the final bend, carrying precious cargo toward a destiny that would be decided in the next few minutes. Marshal Wilkes was finally ready to finish what he had started 4 years ago. The orphan train pulled into Cross Creek Station with a grinding of brakes and hissing of steam, unaware of the deadly trap awaiting. Joshua signaled to Gray Eagle's warriors, who had positioned themselves on the mesa ridges overlooking the station. Martha crouched behind the water tower, her carbine trained on the brush where the Dawson gang lay hidden. As the first outlaw emerged from cover, Joshua stepped into the open, his Marshal's badge gleaming in the afternoon sun. "Jake Dawson," he called out, his voice carrying across the platform. "United States Marshal Joshua Wilkes, you and your men are under arrest." The response came in gunfire and curses as the gang broke from their concealment, but they found themselves caught in a carefully planned crossfire. Gray Eagle's warriors had learned the white man's fighting tactics, and their rifles spoke with deadly precision from the high ground. The battle was swift and decisive. 4 outlaws fell in the first volley, while 3 others surrendered when they realized their position was hopeless. Jake Dawson himself took a bullet through the shoulder from Martha's carbine as he tried to reach the children's car. When the smoke cleared, 35 frightened but unharmed children peered from the train windows at their unlikely saviors. Joshua helped the wounded conductor tend to the engine crew while Martha comforted the younger orphans with gentle words and shared candy from her traveling bag. Gray Eagle bound the surviving outlaws with rawhide strips, his warriors maintaining vigilant guard. "It is finished," the Cheyenne leader said simply. "The debt is paid in blood and justice." 3 days later, Joshua escorted the captured outlaws to the territorial prison in Cheyenne, officially closing the case that had haunted him for 4 years. Martha chose to accompany the orphan train to its final destination, finding purpose in helping other displaced children find new families. At their parting, she offered Joshua something he had never expected. "My father would have been proud of the man you became today." Joshua returned to White River Valley, but not as a hermit seeking escape. He reopened his cabin as a way station for travelers and kept his Marshal's badge polished. ready to serve justice whenever the territory called upon him. The shadow of his past would always remain, but it no longer controlled his future.